We're joined by William Lee, a chief economist at the Milken Institute. He joins us from Los Angeles. Thank you for your time, sir. What do you make of this trade deal? Is this a good result for Donald Trump? And more importantly, will it be seen as a win back home?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it follows the template that President Trump had outlined in his very first speech at Davos in January, when he said to the world, the U.S. is open for business. Please come and invest in the United States. We're going to lower taxes, have smaller government to free resources, have fewer regulation, and we'll have a tariff barrier against unfair competition if you were to produce in the United States. And these are exactly the deals that have been forged with the UK, now the EU, Japan, probably with South Korea, where the deal is you come invest in the United States, bring your capital here, because the United States is still the highest return on capital for global investors, because it's a source of innovation, and you will have success in accessing the largest marketplace in the world. So that deal, I think, is going to be very successfully regarded by not only President Trump, but by the Americans in general. And the world will benefit, because I think it'll be leading to a better allocation of resources where investment capital will flow to the United States rather than foreign produced goods.
How do you think he achieved this result? Talk us through his strategy.
Yeah, I think the strategy has been pretty clear from the very beginning. He had some strategic uncertainty introduced in terms of varying deadlines. He certainly had credible threats in terms of high tariff rates. And in fact, it's very reminiscent of the strategy that President Kennedy employed during the 1960s against the Cuban Missile Crisis, where brinksmanship, the notion of bargaining with your counterparties, treating them very seriously, very respectfully, but giving them credible alternatives. You either partner with the U.S. or face high tariffs, and that has been President Trump's pitch from the very beginning.
It's interesting that you use the word he treated partners respectfully, because perhaps the Europeans would disagree. I mean, he's got this trade deal that he wanted, but it's come at a cost, does it not, of his relationships with his allies? And at some point, could that come back to bite him?
Well, I think he's introduced a sense of reality into the world. The Europeans have been living in the post-WTO world of the U.S. subsidizing the development of Europe and the rest of the world, and that post-World War II scenario no longer applies because the needs of global trade have changed. And so we need to get rid of the WTO system and replace it with a much more flexible and bilateral and regional based type trade system. As far as Europeans are concerned, I think they themselves were being somewhat untruthful when they say, "Oh, we'll give you zero and zero tariffs, right? Zero tariffs for zero tariffs." Well, the tariff level in Europe has already been very low with the various rounds of trade negotiations that have taken place over the last several decades. But it's the non-tariff barriers that have been really very, very onerous on not only U.S. Companies wanting to trade in Europe, but also for other countries wanting to go into the European marketplace. So non-tariff barriers are really the key to the disruption that President Trump wanted to introduce to get rid of all obstructions, to open up all markets. And I think that's the point that he's been pressing. And the high U.S. tariffs were a way of reflecting to them what it was that the U.S. was facing in terms of legal standards, environmental standards, health standards, and other legal requirements that U.S. companies had to go through in order to trade in the EU.
And William, in terms of the 15% deal reached, is that a good deal or a bad one for Europe?
Well, I find it very amazing that a few months ago, even the notion of a minimum 10% tariff was considered outrageously high. Now, 15 seems awfully good. So I think the perceptions of what is a reasonable level of tariffs for countries to have, and in lieu of all of the non-tariff barriers that countries have already put in place, has now shifted to a much more realistic setting. We are facing very high non-tariff barriers around the world among our closest trading partners. And I think this notion of 15% is not only a good deal, I think the U.S. conceded quite a lot in face of what the U.S. actually does face abroad.
Good to get your perspective. William Lee, chief economist at the Milken Institute.